Batra Daf, Kuf Chav Zayin, 8 lines down. Rav Sharavia just mentioned that a tumtum, a child that turns out to be a boy because the genitalia is revealed, is did not make the mother tameh. Maybe the other question. I'm a tumtum is a woman who has miscarriage and she miscarries a tumtum or androgynous. Androgynous is a child that has double genitalia. Don't Google it. Then if she has miscarriage of that child, Teshev Zachal and Nekeva, she has to be Machmira, to have the days of, she has to be, she's Tameh, she washes herself for both male and female because she's not sure. So we see clearly that Tumah laws do apply, by Tumtum at least. The Gemara says, Tifta to Rav Shavia, it's a question against Tifta, it's a question against Rav Shavia. The Gemara says maybe it's lemma to have it Tifta to Rav Shizvi. Maybe it's also a question against Rav Shizvi because he said that Tumtum's like a normal boy in regards to Brit Milah, for example. So it should be a question against him. The Gemara says, no, Tana Savukim Misafkila. Mishnah could be the Tana, the Mishnah could be Safek whether or not it's Machmir. How do we look at it? Tumtum. And therefore, the Humra, he went strict by Tumah, but by Rosh Hizvi, it's not, we're not Machmir. That's the case, that's the case that was Machmir, then it should be Machmir, the stringency regarding male and female to a Nida. Because if we're not sure what's going on with the childbirth, technically if it's a boy or girl, then maybe there should be no childbirth tuma at all, and therefore it would be a din of tahara issue regarding to nida by itself, and therefore the stringency of being for male per se is not really strict because male is less than the amount of time for female or regular nida. Remember, says kasha. It's a good question. Okay, next. We have a proof according to Rabbi that said that the firstborn tumtum does not get a portion. Ben velo tumtum, this pasuk says son, which excludes tumtum bechor. When it says bechor velo safek, so it excludes a child that's not sure if it's a firstborn. Bishlam ben tumtum makes sense according to the pasuk that says exclude the word ben excludes tumtum. Kid ben me. It's like Rabbi. And the bechor velo safek lafukim. When the pasuk says that a bechor means firstborn, but not a safek firstborn, an unsure firstborn. Lafukim was excluding. Lafukim is excluding what Rava said. Two wives of a single man. They gave birth by themselves. They were both pregnant. They both gave birth. They have two children. They don't know whose is whose. Which one came first? For this guy who had the firstborn son. They have to write a harsha'a to fill the portions. Let's say there's 10 kids. These two kids are, one of them is the firstborn, the top two. So if they try to collect by themselves, each child can say, no, you can't collect the whole portion because maybe the other one is it. So what they do is they each write a permission slip, basically saying, if I'm the firstborn, I'm giving him permission to collect double, and that way one of them collects double. That's the harsha'ah. So this Braita would exclude that. Gemara says, "Amar le Rav Papa le Rava, v'hashlach Ravin." Ravin said, "Davar da she'alti l'chol Rabbatai asked all rabbis, lo amar lo davar. They never told me this. Beram kach amru mishum b'nai. However, they said the name of Rabbi Yanai, hokru l'basov b'nai atahavu. They have cases of two brothers who were born privately that were initially known who was firstborn, and then they got mixed. Kotvina sha'azah, you're able to write hasha'ah lo akru, but they never were known. And kotvina sha'azah, that you can't write hasha'ah. So hadarach hokir Rava umar la'alev. The Rash Rava made a new class that made an announcement and said, what I said earlier was a mistake. He quotes Rabbi Yanai, he agrees to that he made an announcement, a new speech saying that it has to be first had at one point identity had to be known. It can't be that it was never known. In that case, it would be excluded that they would not be able to collect because it was never a time that they were an official bechor. Okay. Shmuel asked the question. Please teach us. You have a guy who you assume he's the firstborn son of the dad. Then the person's father said, "No, another child is the bechor." What's the Can the father go against hazakah, the presumed knowledge of that we thought earlier? They answered him back. He's able to write the hasha'ah documents for each other. Because the problem is, if he holds like Rabbanan, that did not believed in a scenario of chazaka, the shlach lu karan, then he should have answered according to Hachamim that there's no claim. Ikra b'das v'le b'rikala Rabbi that the father is believed. Shliach lu Rabbi He should have said the chazak Rabbi that you are believed. Why do you need a harsha'ah? Meaning either it works or it doesn't work. You don't need harsha'ah in either scenario. Where it says Misafki lu Ikra b'das Shmuel wasn't sure about the chazak Rabbi Rabbanan, therefore he kind of went in between. Mahi, what's the machlok between Rabbi and Rabbanan? Sign right says. Yakir, the pasuk says you have to recognize your firstborn. Yakir that means he has to be able to identify to others. מכאן ברי בידה, בני מה נתן לומר זה בבכור, בשם השם נתן לומר זה בבכור, כך נאמר נתן לומר זה בבכור בן החוסה. The pasuk says that the fact that it says you're identifying the firstborn, the father is identifying the firstborn, we learn from here the father has ne'emanut. He has the ability to identify and say, this is my firstborn son, that's my firstborn son, and also this son of mine is a son of a divorcee or a chalutza, which would make him pasul for kuna. Hachamim say no, is not believed. That's why the pasuk is yakir, to recognize, teach you that you're able to identify. What does the Rabbanan do with that pasuk, with that word? That's talking about a case the father believes to identify the Bechor when there is no chazakah, and he's just saying, "Oh, you're not sure who it is? Oh, it's the one. This is my firstborn." What's that? What's that teaching you? The to give him double portion. What's the chidush? To give him double portion? You're saying, "Oh, this is my firstborn double portion." If he wants, he can just give it to him as double portion because it's his son, and he can give it to him as a gift. You don't need the pasuk to teach me yakir to give double portion. No, not necessary. Benachasim shenaflu. Lola Ahamikan's affirming where the father already died, and now properties fell, and now we're not sure what to do with his properties, and the father can no longer obviously give it to him anymore. Who a person can acquire things that have not materialized. We have this concept throughout Shas already. Kiddushin, early in Rav Batra, you're able to sell something and acquire things that don't exist yet. Yakir, therefore the child should be able to acquire it. Yakir, what does he do with the word Yakir? It's talking about a case where the properties fell to the father while he was dying in the throes of death throes. In that case, even according to the Meir, you cannot transfer property over, unable to speak, unable to do anything because the guy is busy dying. In that case, the pasuk is teaching you that a father can identify a firstborn and give him double properties in that scenario because it's necessary. Okay, Tabaran. There's a hazakah. There's an assumption that this child is the firstborn. And then the father says, no, the other one's the firstborn. Ne'eman, he's believed. Let's say there's an assumption that a certain guy is not the bechor, and then the father says he is my firstborn. He's not believed. So how can we have the Braita saying two separate things regarding the ability of the father to identify? The Gemara says first part of Yehuda, believed. Last part is Rabbanan, not believed. The guy says, this is my son. Then he says, this is my slave. He's not believed to say that he's a slave. You can't be posel. He first says he's my slave, then he says my son. Ne'eman, he's able to quote unquote kosher him into his son. And the reason is because when he said initially that he's slave, but really it was his son, it's because he's probably saying that he's like my slave. He serves me as well as a slave does my son is such a good boy. And the opposite applies in regarding to the tax station. What does that mean? You're passing by the tax collection station, you passed an IRS. He says, this is my son. Afterward, he says, my slave. Ne'eman, he's believed. Why? Because he didn't want to get charged for having a slave. And therefore, it was cheaper for him to say that it was his son. Right? You get the write-off. So therefore, when he walks afterward and says, my slave, then he's believed. Amar Avdihu, if he initially said he's my son, then he says my son, then my slave. Then he said he's my son, and the man is not believed because there's no reason to call him slave by the tax collector because then you're getting charged extra. So therefore, that must have been the truth. And now that you're trying to say son, we don't believe you. Answer the question: if a guy was serving someone else as like a son would, right? The child is serving the quote unquote dad very, very well, dressing him, etc. The guy says, yeah, he's my son. Then he's like, no, he's my slave. He's not believed. If the guy was serving like a slave, and the guy says, yeah, this guy is my slave. Then he says, my son. He's not believed. Right, this is the second part is the exact opposite of Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan said he will be believed. The Gemara says, in that case, it's about a case where the guy called the guy who's serving him a slave with the boundary of 100. What does that mean? He has this slave has the worth of 100 zuz, meaning he wasn't just saying, "Oh, this is my slave." He's like, "This is $1 million slave," which is a something that even if you're talking about your son, you wouldn't refer to him as $1 million slave. You would say he's serving me like a slave. From the fact that he called him $1 million slave, that shows that he must have been an actual slave, and he cannot retract that.